Disappointing game for the Pelicans in their loss to the Chicago Bulls. So let's play a game of who or what is to blame. It's a bonus episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. Here with y'all, recording this at like 10 a.m. on Sunday, a bonus episode of Locked On Pelicans after they lose to the Chicago Bulls 124-118. Really disappointing game that they were still kind of like in until the end, but not really. We'll break down basically who's to blame, because there's a couple of ways that you could look at this, I think. I think they're all valid, and they all lead to kind of bigger topics, bigger discussions around the team. So this will be a slightly shorter show than normal. Each segment will be a little bit quicker since we're doing a bonus episode. We got a big episode coming tomorrow, Monday, probably dropping Sunday night for you here on Locked On Pelicans to get you set for the quarterfinals of the in-season tournament. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. It's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today. And thank you for making it every day, because you're an everydayer, hopefully. Love seeing y'all, meeting y'all. And yeah, support the channel by becoming an everydayer. So let's get into it. Who are we going to blame? Let's hand out some blame here in the Pelicans' loss to the Chicago Bulls, right? No Zach LaVine for the Chicago Bulls. Yeah, no CJ McCollum, no Trey Murphy for the Pelicans. But still, should beat a pretty bad Chicago Bulls team, and now they didn't, and that's just overall very, very disappointing, to be perfectly honest. So who's to blame? Let's start with the defense and coaching, because this was something that was brought up a lot. Some of the lineups in this game were not good. Running Jose Alvarado and Jordan Hawkins in the backcourt did not really work, I don't think. And it led to some pretty bad defense. The Chicago Bulls, we'll get into three-point shooting here in a minute, took 43s, made 17 of them, 42.5%. It was bad. You know, Coby White, who we'll talk about in the third segment here, went off in this game against the Pelicans, and multiple times he was just left open, particularly after the Pelicans made a basket when their defense can get back and get set. And it was just disappointing to see. They were unorganized. They didn't really seem like they knew what was going on. They didn't seem really into this game on the defensive side after, say, like the first quarter or so. You know, and when you run those smaller lineups out there, I love Jose, right? Like, I love Jose. One of my favorite, if not my favorite player on the team currently in terms of just guys you like. That said, he's undersized, and he can get killed at times in the half court. And he did in this. If he's not getting you steals, if he's not, able to be kind of the menace that he is, he can hurt you. Yeah, he's making shots, which is good. He was 2 of 5 from 3, which was massively important in this game. But also missed a couple of shots right at the rim due to being undersized. The defense was getting pushed around. Him and Hawkins at times in the half court is a liability on that side of the ball. And for Willie Green to kind of keep going to that, I think was a little bit of a concern. That said, who else is supposed to play right now, right? Here was your available roster. You had the starters in Ingram, Zion, Valanciunas, Herb, Dyson Daniels. Then you have Hawkins, Alvarado, Marshall, Zeller. Like, that's it. Kyra's not going to help you here, right? Sebron's not going to help you. Jeremiah Robinson Earl, who, on a two-way deal started and played some minutes for the Pels, isn't going to help you. There just isn't any other guard depth. They could use another guard. Having Kyra just getting DMPs on the bench isn't doing them any favors. They need another guy, I think, that you could maybe rely on a little bit, but they don't have that. So when I look at this and people want to kind of go, with pitchforks and torches after Willie Green, I'm not really sure. Like, there's just not much else they could be doing here other than maybe mixing in Herb Jones, Dyson Daniels more, to not put Herb at times on Coby White. I get it, but it seems like that could have really helped them, in this one here. So looking at it, I do think some of it's on coaching. I think some of it is just also on availability. You have CJ that I think is going to help you a little bit. But, really, they put Jose on Kobe White for way more than it probably should have been. Same for, Dyson Daniels defended him the most. That was good. Jose did an admirable enough job. And he also just actually lit up looking at the numbers here. Herb Jones, 4 or 5 from 3 with Herb Jones defending him. So maybe that wouldn't have been the move. Just one of those games where, they're shorthanded. Not really sure. They could use a little bit more guard depth. Now, you saw it in this one. I think that leads to a larger discussion, too. I've had people say, oh, is this team too deep? I had someone ask me that recently, and my answer was no, I don't think so. You look at some of these guys, and they're still very limited. We love Jose, but again, limited player at times, not always. Same for Najee Marshall. It was 2 of 7, 1 of 4 from this one. Do you want to rely on Cody Zeller, right? I don't know. Hawkins is a defensive liability, has been for a little bit now, despite him needing to make his shots. I think that creates a little bit of a problem for the Pelicans. So they're not as deep as you necessarily think. There's some depth here, and I think more importantly, it works around the stars well. And the stars played well. Zion, 27 points. Brandon Ingram, 10 of 15, 23 points. But we'll talk about that in a minute. Still a good game from both of them. You need other guys to step up, and that just really, truly didn't quite happen in this one nearly as much as you needed, given Kobe White going off and DeMar DeRozan being DeMar DeRozan. So, some of it's on the coaching for some of those lineups. Certainly, they need to kind of divorce themselves from these small backcourt lineups and try and figure out what they can do, whether it's putting Herb alongside one of the point guards or Dyson alongside one of the point guards at all times. That's maybe an option, something to look at going forward with all of that. So coming up next, let's take a look at three-point shooting, because that was also a problem for the New Orleans Pelicans in this one. Both good and bad for them. Well, all bad for them, both on offense and defense. There we go. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Right now, though, I'm excited to tell you about Jase Medical. We come to sports to escape from some of the crazy realities of life, but you've got to prepare for real life. According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of the worst flu season in over a decade. It's pretty scary. And I can't imagine a more helpless feeling than if one of my family members got sick while a supply chain issue kept them from life-saving medication that they need. And thankfully, we're going to be okay because of Jase Medical. The Jase case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics that treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, sinusitis, skin infections, among others. Stuff that basically could happen to any of us. So visit jasemedical.com and complete your physician encounter. It will be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacist at a fraction of the regular cost. It's never been more important to be prepared than today. So go to jasemedical.com, use code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your order. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, including Saturday and Sunday this week, breaking down everything you want to know about this Pelicans team, the #1 Pelicans podcast, coming to you like nobody else does. You want to really support the channel, join the Locked On Pelicans Insiders group. The link is down below. You get to text me. I'll text you back. Send me your questions, all of those things. Only do that through the Locked On Pelicans Insiders group. You can cancel it at any time, too, if you don't like it. And of course, become an everydayer. Listen Monday through Friday, because we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So let's get into the three-point shooting. This one was interesting, I think, because not great in this game. Pelicans were 8 of 25 from 3, 32%. 25. That's less than their number from last season. Fewer than their number. I know stuff. Fewer than their number from last season. They need to be taking more threes. Now, again, you're missing CJ, you're missing Trey Murphy. That's missing a lot of three-point shooting in your lineup. But your starters combined to make 3 threes. That's it. Brandon Ingram didn't take one. Zion didn't take one. Valanciunas took 4. Herb Jones went 0 for 4. And Dyson Daniels went 1 of 3. 8 of 25. By contrast, the Bulls were 17 for 40. When you look at that number, 8 for 25, that's as many made threes as Kobe White made by himself. We'll get into him in the next segment. He was 8 of 13. He made as many threes as the Pelicans made as a team. That number's bad. They've got to take more threes. It was weird in this game. You had Jordan Hawkins out there who only took 5 threes. Why isn't he taking more? Why aren't Zion and Brandon Ingram looking for him more, particularly after he made a couple early? Why is Najee Marshall, Jose Alvarado not looking for him more? They're not. I don't know why. They should be trying to feed Jordan Hawkins. They were running Zion and Hawkins pick and rolls in this, which is perfect. But you need to be trying to feed him because you need that 3-point shot attempt. It becomes a math issue after a certain point in time. And it certainly was in this game that you lose by 6 when you're completely outshot, by 3. Now, they got to the line a whole lot more. The fact that Brandon Ingram didn't take 1 3 in this game is frustrating. He knows he needs to take more. The team has been saying they need him to take more. Zion is a guy who scores at the rim. That's his job. That's what he's best at. Let him go and do what he's best at, particularly because that's an efficient shot. Whereas Brandon Ingram, and again, I like BI. The BI fans are going to be in the comments here, and I know what they're going to say, and that's fine, but it doesn't matter. You need him to take more threes, not Zion. Zion, if you're scoring 70% at the rim, is insane efficiency. If Brandon Ingram was doing that, I would tell him to be doing that over other things, but he's not. Yes, he can be a mid-range assassin, absolutely, but it doesn't matter when that shot is like a 45% shot. I can even pull up the numbers here in a second. You've got to take efficient shots because if you don't, you end up with a 21-point third quarter like the Pelicans had in this game. You can't do that. Zion took 1 shot there. They need to try and feed him more. Or if he can't get to the rim because he's got to pass out of it because they're walling it off, as happened in that second Jazz game, and we talked about that, you need to be shooting threes to break that defense a little bit. And they're not. That's a problem. Brandon Ingram in his long mid-range here, or mid-range shots of 10 to 16 feet is 48%, which is a good number. It's a good number. He's also shooting really well from 16 feet to 3-point range of 54%, but he's a career 44% shooter from there. When you have a slightly off night, and he didn't in this game, everything falls apart. It doesn't work. Whereas Zion's scoring whatever percent it is at the rim, which I can pull up, it's maximizing on a micro level, maximizing the single shots that you get to be, the best things. He's shooting 72% at the rim this season. 72% last season. It's just unstoppable there. That's significantly better. You can counterbalance being a lower shooting percentage by that shot being worth another point. That's where stats like true shooting percentage and field goal percentage come into play because it factors in that, 50% from the field is the equivalent to 33%, 50% from 2 is the equivalent of 33% from 3. It's worth the same amount of points when you break it down at that percentage. So they need to be taking more threes just to open up the defense more. Otherwise, you get those quarters where just nothing is going for you and the offense grinds to a halt. And you saw that in this. Trey back will help. CJ back will help. That's why I don't want to harp on this too much because those guys are important to that. We've seen it with CJ. We've seen it with Trey already in just one game where he went 4 of 10. CJ coming back hitting threes was big for the team in terms of spacing, and you saw that in a couple of the wins there. So they'll be able to get this right. But again, how many more threes are they going to be taking? That doesn't add 16 3-point attempts, which puts you closer to then 40 attempts back in there. It's going to end up still being in the mid-30s, which is an improvement over what they did in this game. But they need more of that. They need to be feeding a guy like Jordan Hawkins, I think, more so, looking for him more when you're missing some of the guys in the lineup. The good news is you're going to get, in theory, all of these guys back for Monday's game, the in-season tournament quarterfinals. That's going to be important. But the 3-point shooting, you got to improve it. Brandon Ingram has to be taking 6 attempts per game. He just needs to. I get that it's just not really in his nature, but that's going to make this team so much better and start to maximize everybody, which is what they need to be doing. Maximizing everybody. That means Zion going to the rim. That means BI shooting 3. Still take the mid-rangers, or BI going to the rim too. That would be good. He did a little bit of that in this game. He's been really good at that this season. All right, coming up, you just can't go 8 of 25. 8 made threes when Kobe White makes 8 by himself. Come on, you're going to lose the game. Coming up next, let's talk about Kobe White. That part. Sometimes these games just happen. Don't need to stress too much about it. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Right now, though, I'm excited to tell you about FanDuel because as the weather gets colder, the NFL and NBA offers stay hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. It's $150 if your team wins. Feeling good about the Saints? Feeling good about the Pels? Bet on the money line, $5. They win, you win your $5 bet, and get $150 in bonus bets. So you've been thinking about joining FanDuel. There's no better time to get in on the action. The app's super easy to use. It's what I love about it. And it lets me find all the betting options that I want. Spreads, player props, over, under, same game parlays to maximize my payouts. So visit FanDuel.com/locked on and get in on the NBA action this season, the NFL action this season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL, America's #1 sportsbook, and the official sportsbook of Locked On. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, even on a Saturday, even on a Sunday, breaking down everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. Now, for your second listen, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. I do Locked On NBA. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Okay, let's wrap up the show here. Shorter bonus episode of Locked On Pelicans talking about their 124-118 loss to the Chicago Bulls. Bad defense, bad closeouts, some weird coaching lineups. But again, what are they supposed to really do in a game like this? I think you got to look at this on more of a macro level, over a larger sample size than a one-game thing. And the three-point shooting still continue to be a problem, something that I've talked about for a while. Like 3 weeks of this almost, has how rough this has been and something that is a big time concern. So hopefully as they get healthy, all that stuff comes back. So we're trying to see, I kind of lost the theme here, but the theme is, who are you blaming for the loss? Let me know in the comments down below on YouTube. Who are you blaming for the loss? One of the people I think you can blame, and this one's simple, it's Coby White. 40 minutes, 31 points, 10 of 17 from the field. That's 58.8%. 8 of 13 from three, as many as the Pelicans made. 9 rebounds, 6 assists. He was just awesome in this game. Look, you didn't let DeMar DeRozan fully beat you. DeRozan was good. He also hit threes, which was kind of silly. 24 points for him. But the star of this one for the Bulls was Coby White. Sometimes this happens. Sometimes a dude just goes off. And Coby White, I think we need to add to the list of noted Pelicans killers, guys that just do well against this team for whatever reason. Coby White sometimes just goes off. The Coby Whites of the world sometimes just go off, and that's that, right? Torrey Craig went 3 of 4 in this one for 15 points. You try and take away the main guys. You limited Nikola Vucevic to 3 of 12 and just 6 points. You can live with DeMar DeRozan getting 24 points, right? Patrick Williams didn't make nearly as much of an impact until he had kind of a lob that was the dagger to seal the win. You kind of did your job, and another guy got hot and went off. Now, part of it was by the bad defense, leaving him open multiple times when really you've got to know your personnel, as Antonio Daniels would say, and just be better, to be perfectly honest, when it comes to stuff. But sometimes he's just kind of other players go off. Coby White isn't bad this year, but he's not an all-star level guy, right? You could argue he's been the Bulls' best player over the past 2 weeks or so. But this Bulls team is not doing well. Oh, I clicked on the wrong thing. What is Coby White averaging this season? He is averaging, where is it? Of course. It's also funny because he was a guy that I would have looked at as a trade target, as someone I kind of like, that maybe a buy low candidate. 15 points per game. He is shooting from three. Oh, he's shooting really well from three actually this season. Oh, he would be a good player on the Pelicans, but I don't think they're going to be able to get him. So 15 points per game. He doubled that. Sometimes that just happens. You don't expect Coby White to go for 31 points. Pelicans made his life a little bit easier, but sometimes you've got to just live with the role players beating you, right? When you look at the game the other night for the Pelicans where Zion was limited, Brandon Ingram was limited, and they managed to kind of gut out the win and just do what they needed to do against the San Antonio Spurs because Jonas Valanciunas goes off. Popovich, it's what we said in that show too. Popovich is probably we're not going to let Ingram beat us. We're not going to let Zion beat us. And if someone else beats us, okay, it is what it is, right? There you go. It's kind of like Tulane in their loss. with the backup QB for SMU in there, and they're like, we're going to try and limit the running game. They didn't really do that. That was a disappointing game overall. And then if the backup QB beats you by like throwing the ball or running the ball, like it is what it is. You can't really game plan for that sometimes. And that's what happened here. Kobe White got hot, he beat him. Like you can blame him for this. Without him going a ridiculous, making 8 threes, if he makes 2 less, this is an entirely different game and the complexion looks very, very different. So what can you kind of do on some of those things other than maybe have not left him open as much? Let me know what you think. Sometimes it's just as simple as that when it comes to basketball. Let me know who you think is to blame in the comments down below on YouTube. That's going to do it for this bonus episode of Locked On Pelicans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NolaJake on Twitter. Be back with y'all tomorrow. Should have a bigger show to cover the in-season tournament, scheduling some things. Probably going to be talking with Matt George of the Locked On Kings podcast. A little bit of a crossover episode. Looking forward to it. See y'all probably later Sunday night, Monday, depending on when you're listening. I'll catch y'all then.